I'm Josh Harris, and you're listening to Clear and Loud, a podcast about the ideas, stories, and voices that are shaping our world. So the question today is this: is Instagram over? That's what I want to talk about. Yes, of course, Instagram still exists. There are billions of people who are using it. But what I want to discuss is it sliding into obscurity and irrelevance as other apps rise and our habits for using our phones and different social media platforms change? To talk with me about this, I have a very special guest named Emma Sato, who is a talented 23-year-old product designer who listens to more podcasts than anyone I know. She is an all-around interesting, thoughtful, funny human who happens to be my daughter. Emma, good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Dad.
And actually, I'm really hoping that you will become a recurring guest here on Clear and Loud. You know, a lot of times when I interview people, I'm sort of just focused on their story, what they're building, their company, and so on. But what I thought would be really fun about having you on at different times, as much as I can get you on the podcast, is for the two of us to actually just discuss different topics that we find interesting. And I love how just in our relationship, we end up talking about, this intersection of tech and culture and current trends, and especially where like technology really meets and shapes our lives. Which would you say that's a big like thing that you're interested in?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Also,
And
my lifelong dream, my ultimate career goal is to be a podcaster
oh
/
my
investigative
gosh.
journalist. It's kind of a joke, but
So you're really just hacking my podcast as
I'm
part of your great ambitions.
I'm just doing design until I can break into the podcasting space.
I love it. That's so great. How many podcasts do you think you listen to in a day or a week? Or
In a day or a week? Ooh.
I don't know how you measure that, but
Yeah, that's really hard to measure. I think it's more than I think it is, but I would say I probably have like maybe 8 to 10 that I have on like a steady rotation in like a week. Actually,
wow.
I feel like I haven't started very many new podcasts lately. So
Well, whenever we're together, you're always like telling me about some great podcasts you're listening to, and a lot of those are kind of tied into tech, wouldn't you
yeah, a
say?
lot of them are.
Yeah.
I do also think for me, the podcast addiction, it falls into the like people who have the TV on all the time like category.
But it's
It
so
might
much
be an
more
anxiety
it's
thing.
so much more respectable. Like
True,
if you
totally.
go over to someone's house and they're like watching TV while they eat dinner, people kind of look down their nose on that. But I feel like if someone's listening to podcasts all the time, like, oh, they're so refined and
Well,
educated.
one of my favorite podcasts called Keeping Records. It's a comedy podcast. They always say podcasts are reading. So sometimes you can even
Oh.
say, oh, I read recently, but it was in a podcast. Like that's allowed, I think.
Oh, interesting.
Just kidding.
I did not know about this new rule. I
Podcasts
love it.
they are reading.
That's great. All right. Well, I'm going to pull out my phone.
Okay.
And I'm going to open up this article from The Atlantic by Kate Lindsay. Sorry, Kate Lindsay. And this is from last November 2022. The title of the article is Instagram is Over.
Oh.
And I just want to read like the first couple paragraphs because I think this really sets the tone. Kate writes, earlier this fall, while riding the subway, I overheard two friends doing some reconnaissance ahead of a party. They were young and cool, intimidatingly so, dressed in the requisite New York all black with a dash of Y2K revival, and trying to figure out how to find a mutual acquaintance online. Does she have Instagram? One asked before adding with a laugh, does anybody? I don't even have it on my phone anymore, the other confessed. Even just a couple years ago, it would have been unheard of for these 20-something New Yorkers to shrug off Instagram, a sanctimonious lifestyle choice people would have regretted starting a conversation about at that party they were headed to. But now, it's not so surprising at all. To scroll through Instagram today is to parse a series of sponsored posts from brands, recommended reels from people you don't follow, and the occasional picture from a friend that's finally surfaced after being posted several days ago. It's not what it used to be. And then this sentence, which is probably the worst possible thing that could be said about any social platform. Gen Z's relationship with Instagram is much like millennials' relationship with Facebook.
Uh-oh.
Begrudgingly necessary. Casey
Yeah.
Lewis, a youth culture consultant, writes. Wow.
Whoa. That's damning.
What when you hear that, like does that line up with the kind of little, I don't know, the things that you're hearing from friends or
Hmm.
from people in your world?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm like a little surprised to hear that. And also that was a year. Was that a year ago?
It was November of
Last November.
2022. Yeah, last November.
Maybe it's all my subjective experience, but I do feel like a lot of people are still on Instagram. The other thing
Yeah.
is I feel like there is like a West Coast slow like ripple effect where like people in New York
Mm,
maybe are like thinking Instagram is uncool, but it like hasn't made its way over here yet.
yeah, that
But
makes
it
sense.
feels like everyone in my world, in my age category, a lot of them are still on. But I have seen a lot of people there've been a couple people who left Instagram and it definitely well, we can get into my
Well,
journey with
the interesting
Instagram.
thing is the point that she's making, like one of those people on the subway was
Mhm.
not on Instagram, and maybe this person they were trying to stalk was not on Instagram. But even the people that are not necessarily posting that much. Like I just think
Yeah.
it's interesting how it's like it does feel like it's very different in
Yeah.
terms of the experience you have, whether your friends are really on there posting content,
Mhm.
and that's kind of the shift that I see taking place.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It feels like there's a lot less happening
I mean, the
just all
people that are
over.
really active are often people whose company or business or whatever it might be is tied to Instagram. Like that's the feeling I have.
It's in so can I give a little context for my like Instagram lifestyle in the
Yeah, for
last like
sure.
year?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So in August, I took I went off, fully off Instagram for the second time in my life.
Wow.
Um and deleted my personal account, Finsta, my hot girl account. Requested to delete it. 30 days later, it actually deleted. So I don't have that account. I
Oh,
did
that account's completely
that
gone.
account is gone. I did hang on to my um kind of like semi-professional account
Your
that I
main account. Yeah.
yeah. Uh and so then I spent like maybe 5 or 6 months like really off Instagram. And the other thing that I did was that I had you change the password to the account that I saved so I couldn't log in,
I remember you
which
doing that. Yeah.
huge hack. Huge hack. I think that's probably the best possible way to stay off these platforms.
Is it give
Uh,
somebody else the password?
yeah, it's just like because I wasn't about to be like texting you at like 11:30, being like, "Hey, like I want to kind of stalk this guy from Hinge." Like that layer
Actually,
of shame really helped.
I could totally see you doing that, but that's yeah,
I think
it's a
ultimately
good
that
barrier.
is what I was doing when I got the password from you. Okay, so then I'm not sure why. I've relapsed recently a little bit, but in like I don't use the Instagram app at the moment. I'm logged in on Chrome and I am logged in on my computer.
Okay.
And I actually I've been checking it a lot more lately. I've been sick, so I've been checking it a lot, and I am kind of wanting to like tone it back again. But in that time, when I took a real substantial break, I maybe logged in a few times. I was very off.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot has changed about the platform. And then going back
Interesting.
on, I'm sure there's an element of it where my views on it has really changed, and so I'm seeing certain
Mhm.
things in a different light. But like I think there are some real differences with how it's working and how people are engaging with it. It does feel like it's all influencers or people whose career is on Instagram. Like
So when you came back after having been off of it for quite a while, how did it feel to you? just overall? Like, what did it?
Hmm.
Or I mean, you said it felt like it had changed. Was the change that it just felt like a lot of like influencers and those types
Well,
of people using it?
it's the account that I have is not as fun because it's obviously it's not like my friends and like
Oh, right.
it's a
Yeah.
lot of it's just a kind of a lot of random people. But I follow so many more people on that account. So usually in the like a year or two ago, it would be like an endless stream of content, like a lot of artists that I follow, just like a lot
Yeah.
happening. And I just feel like the amount of stuff that I can see on there is not connected to how many people I follow. As in like a lot of those people are
Yeah.
not posting anymore.
Right.
They're like
Exactly.
zombie accounts.
Right. Well, okay, so that's really interesting context. And let's do
Yeah.
that thing like in the movie where it's like we get the most recent what's happening and now we're flashing all the way back to the beginning
Oh,
of
let's
the
flash
story.
back.
Let's flash back. Do you remember how old you were when you got Instagram?
I think I was 13 or 14. Whoa.
Okay. So
Pretty sure I was in ninth grade, so I
you
could
were
have
born in
been,
2000, so it was 2013.
yeah.
What do you remember that being like for you? Was it a big
Whoa.
deal?
It probably was. I think I had it on an iPad mini. I don't think I actually had a phone.
Okay. I can't
I
remember, yeah.
remember taking my profile photo and kind of like being a little, like, I think I went like this and kind of like had my hand in my hair and made it like black and white. And then one of our family members, not someone in our immediate family, and I won't say who, but somebody kind of made fun of me. And then I was like, oh, the one time I tried.
Oh, no. That's so
um,
funny.
and one thing I really remember, so maybe this is my first experience of using Instagram in a way to, in that sort of social community way, is
Mhm.
that year I started ninth grade at a private school. We did this like crazy classic thing where we like pulled me out and we're like, I'm gonna homeschool this year. And then like a day later
Oh,
I went back to school.
we
So I
changed our
had like
mind, yeah.
said goodbye to all my friends and being like, I'm getting homeschooled, like I gotta go. And then that night I think I posted on Instagram like something so unbelievably corny, but it was like me with a sign being like, I'm coming back. Oh, I can't believe I'm sharing this.
Oh, that's so
So
funny.
that's a
So, that was the first time you used it to actually, like, broadcast to a bunch of friends a life change
I
or
get yeah, I
yeah.
don't think that was my first post, but I think it was like an early kind of
Yeah.
Instagram moment where you're like telling people a bunch of stuff that they didn't need to know. You're giving an update.
It's actually so hard to put yourself back in the mindset of using Instagram. That was 10 years ago, a decade ago. So much has changed, and I think we have the tendency to kind of, like, feel like not that much has changed. It's kind of always been this way, but it's like
Mhm,
the incremental changes are so small, you get used to things, but when you really go back to the mindset of 10 years ago,
mhm.
like, it's such a different way of using the platform. It was much more like I just remember people would, like, post pictures of their coffee more.
Totally.
I feel like there was much more of, like, a, "Here's where I am right now," kind of.
Like the
I
floor
mean
pics, remember when everyone took like pictures of their feet and or like their shoes
oh,
in the
yeah.
floor?
Yes.
Like that was so pure.
Well, I mean, how like, if you could try to remember the way that it functioned at that time, it was it was very photo-based, obviously. Like,
Mhm.
what are some of the things about kind of Instagram in its original purest form that made it special or that people loved? What would you say?
Hmm. Um, I mean, I think the filters were a big thing for like very early days. Like the filters were really cool. And
Yeah.
everyone kinda loved, like, that you could editing things, like, in-app. I feel like that was kind of, like, a cool new thing.
Yeah, that was a new thing. Mhm.
Um,
It was much more documenting life,
yeah,
I feel.
yeah,
Like,
and
it's like, "This is what we're doing." It was more f it felt like more family based. I mean, again, I was in a particular season of life,
well
myself, but
Like, rather than Facebook where you have to upload, like, a big bulk of photos or, like, photo going to your timeline with, like it felt kind of formal, almost like adding to, like, an album. Instagram is sort of like, "Here's this moment, like, this is what I'm
Yeah,
doing,
that's
like,
a good
right
point.
now."
Yeah,
It
and it
was
was so
almost more like stories when it
yeah.
started.
It was yeah, that's true. It was so much more photo based than something like Facebook. Like Facebook, you you know, originally okay, we don't want to get into Facebook too much here. I'm getting off track. But like I just remember like originally you would like update your status like it was like Josh is dot 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 and then you would write like
Oh.
sitting at the at the pool blah blah blah, like that's how Facebook statuses used to function. And then it was more kind of text based, you could post photos and that type of thing. But for Instagram, it just felt like so much more clean in terms of your engagement with the photos, so it was very much image based first and foremost.
Mhm.
And I don't in the early days, you didn't have long text posts underneath the photos in the same
No.
way that we do now. Like
Was
now
there
we
a character
practically
limit?
write blogs. I can't yeah, there was definitely a character limit. I don't know if it was even shorter than it is, today, because
I
I think
mean,
it's like 2000 something is a character limit. But I think in the early days, no one would really do that. No one thought to use it like a blog. It was it was photo and short, statements kind of a thing,
yeah.
which
Like,
was really fun and exciting. Like it felt like such a great way to, catalog your life and see what your friends were doing and so on.
it was so fun. What happened? Ah,
Well, it's funny to
and
think about.
hashtags too, sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And it was very much based in your friend group.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't as much of the like the search page. Like I don't think that even existed back then.
Oh, the
But you were
explore
just
page.
yeah, the explore page, you didn't have that. And you were reading a real time timeline.
This is something that was huge. The activity page. You could see what your friends were doing in it. There was literally a different page. Do you remember this? There was
No.
this
On
toggle.
Instagram they had
Yeah,
this?
that one of the early features of Instagram, you could
Oh,
see. I mean, obviously you
yes.
can see what your friends like, but there was like a specific page for it where it was basically like a I don't know what to
Yes,
call
I
it, but a
actually
feed notification style thing where
I do remember this.
and you would be like,
And
"Oh my gosh, like why are you liking photos of like basically naked girls?" It was like so exposing of your friends. I
I
can't even
do
believe how long that feature stuck around.
I would love to hear the history of like why they changed certain things, like whether someone on staff got into a ton of trouble or they just got so many like, messages from, users like, take this off, you idiots.
It's actually crazy that that was a feature. Can you
That
imagine if
is
that existed today?
I mean, now you can go and you can like if you happen to be on another person's post and
Yes,
someone you
yeah.
follow likes something, you can see that, but you have to like really go and look for it.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas, yeah, to have a summary of what everyone was doing, that would be,
Like, Bob is
Instagram should
slowly
just turn
flipping to
that
the
back
alt-right.
on. They should just like instead of dying a slow death, they should just turn that feature back on and just have the whole
Just go
world
out
just
with a
go up in
bang.
flames.
On the
Uh,
bright side, it would be a lot easier to sort of like chart the internet path that your friends are going down and predict whether or not you're going to be able to have the same values and belief system.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And yeah, they could add AI to it. It could be like, this person, there's not much of a future in this friendship. They are,
So and so
they,
just followed. Do you want to unfollow them?
oh my
Do
goodness.
you I feel like you were a very early adopter of Instagram, like 2012, 2013. Actually, I don't know when. I think Instagram might have come out
Yeah.
in 2013.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly which year it was. I want to say 2012, but
Mhm.
I mean, I've archived all of those really old posts, so I don't really have them on there. But every once in a while, I'll go into my archive photos and I'll just like scroll down, and it's so funny because it's almost like what are people called that like dig in the ground? Archaeologists. I feel like with Instagram, you're like this archaeologist that's digging through different levels of filters, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's the Nashville era. it's
We've made it to the sepia tones, folks.
the sepia tones. It's hilarious how like Oh, borders were another thing. There
Oh,
were these
borders,
really
yes.
thick, thick black borders and different styles that you could put around your photos. And
Well, the
yeah.
crazy thing is, I think this is somewhat changed now, and I also know I'm not the first person to say this, but it is wild how up until recently, like, I think a lot of people have sort of purged their feeds, but you could really just go through someone's entire Instagram and kinda get back to the very beginning, and it was just all
Mm,
there. Like,
yeah,
we weren't people weren't really deleting things or archiving them, like, it was just this
it's true.
long running feed of their entire Instagram lives.
And it's funny how you could kind of like get a sense of what was going on in someone's life that you might not know well or might not be in touch with.
Mhm.
You could be like, "Oh, happy family marriage. Oh, where's spouse? Spouse is not
Totally.
there. Haven't
Oh,
seen them for like, X number of months." And then like, "Oh, announced, divorce," whatever it might
right.
be. It was like you could see all of that happening in their feed because they wouldn't get rid of anything.
Yeah. Yeah, people's entire, like, multiple relationships, like, beginning and ending
Yeah.
just on Instagram, it's like, "Okay, you never" it's all there.
I feel like that could be a new platform where it's permanent. Like somebody could make an app that's like to stay on it, you have to post every day, almost like Be Real,
Like
but
the
then it's
opposite
like,
of, Snapchat. It's like
yeah, exactly. But it's like permanent. Like you have to, that would be crazy.
sorry, I'm burping. This podcast format is making me so anxious. I'm, like, salivating, like, more than I've ever salivated in my life.
We're totally leaving that in. We're
I'm
not even gonna
drowning
edit
over
that
here.
out. We're not even gonna edit that out.
I
Um, Well, maybe let's talk about
sorry.
how you got to the point of being this 13-year-old that was so happy and excited to be on Instagram to, 9, 10 years later,
Mm,
being at this place where you're like, I have to actually take a break from this.
yeah.
Like
Hmm.
what was happening with Instagram in the era that you decided like this is actually not helping me and I need to change it so much?
Yeah. I think it's all the kinda cliched things that everyone could probably say, like the pressure to
Mm,
look like you're doing things, the sort of
mhm.
nagging, almost like intrusive thoughts constantly being like, "I should post this on my story." Like, when I was really active on Instagram, like, a year or 2 ago, those didn't feel out of place, like, it felt super normal to be like, "Ooh, I found a cool, piece of confetti on the street. I'm gonna post it on my story. Like, this song is good."
Mhm.
Everything I was doing was sort of like for Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think that something that had changed about it is that it had, um, I almost wanted, like, for my circle of Instagram, it was sort of like the Emma Chamberlainification of Instagram, where everyday moments became super Instagrammable, but then you were sort of looking for those moments constantly.
Mm.
That sort of sounds like the
Give
entire
give
point.
background to Emma Chamberlain for people who might
Oh,
not know
sure,
who she
yeah.
is.
So Emma Chamberlain she's, I think 22. She rose to fame on YouTube doing very, like, confessional style vlogs
Mhm.
I think around 2016, 2015.
Okay.
And she has since become one of the, I would say, few YouTubers who's basically rose to, like, a real celebrity status.
Mm.
She's, she's been to the Met Gala, she's a brand ambassador for Louis Vuitton, I think.
Mm.
Um, she doesn't even post YouTube videos really anymore,
Yeah.
but she has really great taste, and so her Instagram taste has driven Instagram trends for, I would say, like, young people and young women for the last, like,
Okay.
4 years.
Yeah.
Um, so so
No, it's so funny to think about, a few years ago, like, as you're describing that, I realized in that era, I was much more active on Instagram as well.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't the pandemic, I'm sure, played into this too, just in
Oh,
terms of,
yeah.
how, kind of isolated and dependent we were and on social media. But it's funny to think like, yeah, I've really gotten out of the habit of posting. Like
Yeah.
I'm hardly posting anything. And I don't think in different moments, oh, I can share this.
Yeah,
Um, and that pressure, it really did feel like a almost like your daily tasks, like your daily to-do list,
totally.
like brush your teeth and floss and make sure you make your bed and have you posted to Instagram. Like it's that
Right.
level of pressure.
Like this feeling of, I think for me, it was this feeling of not existing outside of
Mhm.
the internet or like outside of Instagram. Like if I wasn't present on there, people would like
Yeah.
forget about me. I think
Yeah.
it was also combined with this general like sort of doom scrolling, like manic feeling I sometimes get from my phone. But that
Mhm.
feeling often was like driven by my Instagram addiction. So then as I sort of detoxed and went off Instagram, I just was like, these thoughts are wild. Like, why
You could
am I
observe
listening
them. You
to a
could actually
song
like yeah, yeah.
and I feel like I need to tell everyone? I mean, it's totally not in a shamey way. It's more just that those cycles are really ingrained, and
Mhm.
to detach a little bit from them kind of reveals a little bit of the like absurdity
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
Instagram trap.
Well, when you're in a culture with like certain defined behaviors and you're
Hmm.
so immersed in it and everyone else is doing it and you're doing it, it feels so normal. Like
Totally.
what else would we do?
It
Like
is
of
so
course.
normal.
Yeah, it's super normal. So you're right. Like when you step out of it, um, I mean, honestly, I feel this way sometimes, like with church stuff. It's like when you step out of that particular
Yeah.
context and then you go back into it, you're like, whoa, that's so weird that
Oh,
we spoke this way or we thought this way. But it's the same with Instagram.
yeah.
It's like that little extra layer of separation. And like even as we're talking now, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, like I must have like dozens of times a day must have been like thinking, oh, I should post this on my stories. Oh, I should, like
Hmm.
because I was
Yeah.
doing it. So I must have been thinking about it all the time. So
It's wild.
that's wild. That is really wild.
I do feel like it's freed up quite a bit of space in my brain to just be doing and thinking about other things, or frankly thinking about nothing.
Do you like if you ever have kids, would you handle I mean, who knows what will be happening at that
Mhm.
point? Like maybe it'll be like, will you get them their own personal AI
Little
robot or not?
Johnny's
I don't
not
know.
going to have an AI friend until he's at least 17.
Yeah, I, that's what's so funny about the progression of technology and culture is it's like you like one generation is like I would never let my kids do X, but then it's like X is not the issue. Instagram is not going to be the issue in 10
It's
years.
like
People are
people have
not.
been really quiet about television for the past like 10 years.
It's true. It's true. Now it's like, oh, I'm so happy to see my child just spending focused time watching TV. But I'm
uh,
just curious, like, if we could, if you, as you look back, like, would you not give your 13-year-old daughter Instagram?
hmm. I mean, I think first off, it would have been really impossible to know like the path that Instagram was going to take.
Yeah.
In 2013, like Instagram was still an independent company and it could have just totally tanked. Like there's so many social apps that have just completely flopped.
Yeah.
Um and some of the negative like effects on young people, obviously we've known that they exist, but they've only
Hmm.
recently sort of been validated.
Yeah.
Um
Even by Meta itself, like their
right.
internal studies
Yeah.
showing. Yeah.
I think I've heard some different opinions on whether or not young people should have social media.
Hmm.
It's hard. I think if I was a parent, I would probably lean toward like, as long as you can hold off, hold off.
Yeah.
But I guess it's different in every situation. I'm sure there are situations where parents are like, my child is feeling ostracized and has no friends because they're
Hmm.
not on Instagram and they can't DM their friends. Um, but I think the biggest danger, in my opinion, is like just the rabbit hole of like the explore page and you
Yeah.
know, like I think I developed quite a few um healthy habits on Instagram that allowed me to like steer clear of some of those more dangerous things. Like I remember
Yeah.
when I was like maybe 18 or something, I just realized like I need to not be seeing dieting, fitness,
Yeah.
even positive like fitness related content on here. And so I went
Mm.
in and I said like, you know how you can say in the Explorer like I don't want to see this
Don't show
content.
me this.
I did
Yeah.
that on like probably 30 posts and then it all went away. And that was really helpful because it's just
Yeah.
like it's not coming up because I asked it to. It's coming up because I look at it.
Yeah.
Um and I don't think like everyone has those moments where they realize or do that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I it's really hard. I think it's really hard. I think social media is not the best for kids, is my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, I mean, like I can look back and think, I wish I had, as a dad, been more strict with like not having phones in rooms at night, like
Mhm.
just like sleep patterns and all those types of things. Um, but it's really hard in that era when so much connectivity. It's like you want them to have friends, you want them to feel connected.
Mhm.
That's a huge platform for connecting, so you feel like you're, restricting them from relationships. And but it's interesting. I heard about, I think it's the whole state of Utah just passed this like really strict law about social media where they basically like the platforms have to shut it off for kids under a certain age at night.
That's
And
iconic.
parents have to let kids on, and parents can like basically monitor everything their child is doing, DMs, everything, like up until
Ugh,
they're 18. So it's so hilarious because as I as I was listening to this story about it, I was laughing. Or maybe I read it. Now I don't even know the difference between podcasts and
they're
reading
the
anymore.
same.
They're the same thing. But I was just laughing to myself because I was like, this is every like parent's dream, to be able to have this control where they feel out of control. Their kids are doing certain things, and now it's like it's the law, and
Parents start
like
moving to Utah.
seriously. I mean, obviously it gets into all these questions of, does that really work? Kids are going
Yeah,
to do
totally.
workarounds. Like there's going to become the biggest like illegal phone, black market for extra phones in the history of the world in Utah. But it's just that clash of like
Mhm.
parents trying to figure out how to control a new technology, so much so that the state is actually getting involved, which
Wild.
gets a little scary, to me at times when I think about state control and those types of things.
Yeah,
But it's a real struggle, and it's an
totally.
understandable issue that they're dealing with.
Oh, I'm excited to see how that plays out. I don't know if that's the
Yeah.
solution, to be honest. I do think
I,
there's also like a pretty normal pattern of like when you restrict kids from having something, they are then obsessed with it later in life. Like case in point,
yeah.
my goldfish addiction.
Did we not let you have goldfish? Or
We
we just
just
like,
never had goldfish at home, and like now as an adult, I can eat a bag of goldfish in like 15 seconds.
I think I was like that with TV because, our family never had a TV. And so, like, if I'm in any setting where there's a TV on, I'm just like, meow. I'm like, meow. I can't, I
Ah,
can't.
the light.
Yeah. Oh man,
Ugh.
that's really funny. Um, well, I just want to talk for a second about like how, um, the interface and kind of the way that Meta, formerly Facebook, which purchased Instagram, has changed the app over time, and how
Hmm.
that shapes the way we think and the way we interact with it. Because you're a product designer, and for people who wouldn't immediately know what that means, what is a product designer?
Well, product designer is sort of a title for that multiple jobs share, so that's why it's a little bit confusing. But
Mm,
I do UX UI, which is user experience and user interface design. So basically, I'm a graphic designer for apps and software, designing the interactions and the journeys that you take within a piece of a digital tool, and kind of
mm,
both making them look beautiful, but also considering the functionality and um, the patterns and like real world experience
yeah.
of the person using it.
So I just think that's so interesting because it's so much more than just like, oh, here's the graphic layout of something. You're
Hmm.
actually saying, how does the user what does a user see? Is this confusing?
Right.
Is the pathway for them to engage with this, website or app or whatever it might be, help them get to where they want to get,
Right.
or
Yeah.
take in the information they want?
Like, do they know, do they know where to go when they want to do this? When they want to do this, like, does this button go the place they expect? Does the screen
Yeah.
come from the bottom or the top? Like, all those things.
Which makes such a massive difference. I mean, whenever you have an app that isn't designed well in that way, you really feel it. Like it's so you
Totally.
don't even maybe know how to put it into words, but it's just like so annoying. Like, oh, why is
I
this?
do not want to open this app.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So from that product design standpoint, your kind of UX,
Mm-hmm.
user experience viewpoint, what are some of the big moments in the progression of Instagram that you find interesting?
Hmm.
And
Uh,
how it's like, any change they make has a massive effect on the billions of people that, use it. And even
Totally.
the way, which I think is wild, like the way those users see the world because Instagram changes its format.
Yes. Yeah. Huge. I think the first one that comes to mind is when Instagram created their own stories feature to copy Snapchat.
Yeah.
And I remember this was now a really long time ago, but at the time it
Mm.
felt like Instagram had been around forever and this was like going to be the end of Instagram. I
Yeah.
remember that being a really big change. When they first released stories, they felt really kitschy. I remember thinking this is really corny.
Well, you're talking about when Instagram
Instagram released stories.
released stories in response to Snapchat,
Yeah. Because
because
Snapchat
Snapchat,
stories, they were messy. They were like a bunch of like they were like 15-year-olds, like they were disgusting. And that was kind of the point.
yeah,
But Instagram was sort of this like classier platform. And so for
yeah.
them to drop stories felt like, what's the point? Like, we have our
So
posts.
again, so back up because somebody my age totally missed Snapchat. Like, I mean, I did get a Snapchat, but I never understood that app basically.
Right.
But Snapchat became like this huge app for high schoolers
Yeah.
to post stories that disappeared, which at the time that was a new idea, and it was kind of like this way for them to message without anybody,
Well, Snapchat started
tracking.
out as a way to send disappearing messages.
Okay, yeah,
And they could be text based or they could be, it's so hard to even describe them now because everyone knows what they are, but they're based on Instagram. Sort of, they could be like a photo that you drew on and added text to and then sent to your
yeah.
friend, and then that would disappear. And then they had a stories feature where you could do those same photos but post them for your friends and they would disappear
For
after
anyone to
24
see,
hours.
and they would, okay. So
Right.
that was such a popular feature, and Snapchat was eating into Instagram's
Totally.
base
Yeah.
that they added the feature of stories.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of clunky at first, you're saying? Like it
I
didn't seem to
remember it
match?
feeling a little clunky. I don't know what you remember. And this feels like a really long time ago now.
I remember people being like, "What are these things at the top of the?"
Just a whole feed of everyone being like, LMAO stories, I guess, for like 2 days.
It was so funny. Yeah, like people were like, "What is this?"
There were a lot of like corny stickers being used. And I feel like people were like trying to figure out how they were going to be different from how they were going to work on Instagram. And
Yeah,
then I feel like very quickly they became like a completely integral part of Instagram
yeah,
where your posts were, you know, a nice photo, more refined, a cheeky caption, you really thought about it. It sat
yeah,
nicely on your feed, and your stories were funny, they could be provocative, they could be bad, like photo quality,
yeah,
these
yeah.
really minimal moments.
It's like it took the pressure off in
Right.
a way.
It
Yeah.
brought Instagram back to being Instagram for a second, I think.
Well, that's such a funny thing because what you're saying is that there was a period when Instagram first started where it was innocent, simple, documenting your life. Here's what I'm doing. This is happening. I mean, you could post like multiple posts on your feed a day,
Totally.
back in those days because you were
Oh,
just documenting what was taking place, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
yeah, and
That's
then
unheard of these days.
yeah, that's unheard of. That would be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so
I
that's
mean,
so corny."
there was a while, I think, in, like, 2014, 15 where people would post, like, 2 posts in a day, but they would always be like, "2nd post, like, s
Yeah,
kill me,
exactly.
like,
Yeah, it's
sorry."
true. That's like photo dump, yeah. Um, so the idea though is that as people begin to feel more and more pressure to portray this perfect life and only show things that where they looked great and the lighting was right and all those kinds of things, posting something on your grid
Mhm.
became that like the bar was so high that it became there was just a lot of pressure. Like I don't
Yeah,
like that's where you'd almost be like, oh my gosh, I need to like create some moment, or I need to do a little photo shoot or whatever. I mean,
totally.
that's kind of where you had like the boyfriends of Instagram influencers come
Oh,
into
yeah.
place, where you like need somebody else to really help you capture content, and that pressure I think was leading to people not posting.
I bet, yeah, I'm sure.
And that's where then you're saying stories enabled like, okay, it doesn't have to be such a big deal. The bar is not so high because this is going to go away. And so it brought back a little bit of that freshness and ability to just post random things.
Yeah, and I can't remember the order of this, but I think whenever they release stories, you could also send, um, those as DMs, and so I feel like it might be connected that it also kind of made Instagram DMs a more fun and powerful feature,
Oh, interesting.
but
Yeah.
I might need to get fact
I
check on
mean,
that.
it's so funny. Like the point at which DMs became such a big deal, I don't know when that was, but it became like there was some point where you
You
reached
mean,
a
like,
mass of
culturally
people.
or just people
Yeah,
using
just
them?
like culturally, like sliding into someone's DMs, like Instagram being such an important communication tool.
I know what we should
Like
talk about for our
instant.
next segment,
Oh, really?
which is something I've always wanted to talk about, which is the difference between the differences between the different messaging platforms or whatever, and like why they're
Oh.
different and why you use some for certain situations, which is it's
Oh,
starting to
that'd be
break
so
down. But
great.
anyway,
No, that's so cool.
sorry to
Okay.
interrupt.
That's another show. But
That
I
would be a
love that you're
nightmare.
already thinking about when you're going to come back on the
Yeah,
Clear and Loud
so the next time I
podcast.
guest on the pod.
I can just see the progression of this. It's going to be like Josh and Emma, and then it'll be like Emma and
Emma and
Josh, and then
Josh.
it'll be like Emma.
I start sending you the Google Calendar invites. I'm like, hey, Dad, we're recording tomorrow.
That's right. Oh, I saw you couldn't make it. I did the show myself. I love it.
Oh,
No, that's great. That would make me very happy. Um, that's a fantastic idea.
so I'm just thinking of like a legacy podcast where it's like passed down through the family, and it's like, it's like, hey, I'm like Josh Jr. Like, thanks to my dad who started and founded this podcast, I'm the third generation of podcasters. It's just like the same podcast going on for decades.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
Okay,
Well, the thing that I think would be interesting to continue in as we progress, because we brought up how Snapchat forced Instagram to
right.
adapt ad stories, which did become like there was an era there where, and maybe even still, like I can go on Instagram and just go through stories and never even scroll my grid. I
Absolutely.
mean, my feed. Isn't
And
that true?
stories are still one of the few, I would say, fun parts of Instagram, potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so then obviously the next big thing to hit is TikTok.
Oh, true. Totally.
Music. I remember when Musically was a thing and you kids were doing that. And then that kind of like, I don't know, felt like it sort of disappeared. And then TikTok hit. And TikTok, I guess I'd just like to talk about why TikTok has like overtaken Instagram in such a huge
Hmm.
way, has so much momentum, has so much more energy, and specifically related to kind of like the sense of pressure that Instagram has versus the difference of TikTok. Do you have
Yeah.
any reflections on that?
Hmm. I will try to have some. Also haven't been on TikTok since 2020.
Oh, have
So,
you not?
uh, I've like obviously interacted with it, but
Yeah,
I haven't been like having it on my phone, and I haven't been really like
right.
a user of TikTok. And then in this
And
time,
why
I've been off
is that?
Instagram.
And why is that? Is it because at around that same time you were realizing these patterns and you're like, I don't want this a new
It is
platform?
completely addictive. Like, it's unbelievably addictive, TikTok.
I would say it's like if Instagram is cocaine, TikTok is crack.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, it's
I mean,
just
not that I've tried either of
not
those
I'm
drugs.
like,
I
not that
just
I can
wanted
really speak to that experience, but it's just I mean, I did use TikTok in the very beginning of 2020 and starting the pandemic,
Mhm.
which was kind of it felt like sort of this an insanely fun moment on TikTok because everyone had so much time and people were like forging
Oh,
these new styles of
yeah.
content and comedy, and a whole new wave of like internet content was
It
being
really
created.
was quite incredible. Yeah.
And the TikTok algorithm was insane. Like it just you could spend like like a day or so on there and all of a sudden you're seeing like the most niche content, the funniest stuff to you.
Mhm.
Like it was like it knew exactly who you are. It was actually freaky.
Well, as you're talking about it, I'm realizing that I've had that same experience in terms of how addictive TikTok is. But the funny thing is, until recently, where now my work is using TikTok, so I'm having to go on there to look at things and
Mhm.
repost things and so on. Until then, I wouldn't necessarily like think to go and open up TikTok. In other words, maybe just because of the history of using Instagram, it's more kind of ingrained in my phone, habits and so on. But what I would say is I don't think of TikTok as a place where I see people I know or
Interesting.
interact with, it's not a connecting to people I know for me at all.
So
It's
that's a
but
really interesting.
once I go on it, it sucks me in like hardcore. Like I actually have had those moments where TikTok will feed me a post that's like, "Hey, you've been watching a long time. Now's a good time to take a break." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh,
That
I'm
like
such a loser."
meditation guy.
Oh
It's
my
like,
gosh.
okay, this is kind of
So
ironic.
so it's like so much more addictive, but Instagram still is more like a habit because it's like what's happening with my friends and people and that type of thing.
Do you think, because I think that I wonder if that's maybe a generational thing, because I think for potentially for young people, like some of the addictive features of Instagram or the like more time sucking ones are not the social ones. Like they're like the explore feed or
Okay, yeah.
the,
That's makes sense, yeah. In
companies and stuff.
I mean,
And so,
Instagram has become more like that in it because it's trying to be like TikTok.
yeah, that's true. I
Yeah.
just wonder if like the way that slightly
Mhm.
younger people are using social media is less as it's more as entertainment and it's less
Yeah.
as
No,
social
I think you're
network, and
right.
that's maybe made some room for TikTok.
I think that's totally true. I also just think it's interesting how, like, the way that TikTok is set up, you can go on there and not feel any pressure to create anything,
Totally.
but consume a ton of content. Like, there's so much more, in some ways, more creativity. It's lighthearted fun. It's, I mean, it can be anything. It can be
Hmm.
literally anything, but you don't feel the pressure of, I haven't posted.
Yeah, you don't. I think I've made 2 TikToks in my entire life.
And because you don't really necessarily, unless you're like really thinking of someone, go to their page and like, oh, I need to check out what's happening there. Like there, I wonder what the percentage is of TikTok users who don't have anything posted.
Probably super high.
That's very rare on Instagram though, don't you think?
Uh, yeah, I think I think that ratio is probably smaller on I mean, it's
Hmm.
probably different on Instagram. I bet more people
Hmm.
post. Except
Yeah, like
for
I.
every guy I've ever tried to go out with. This inexplicably has 0 posts. Just
Red
kidding.
flag, red flag, or maybe not. Maybe
Green
they're
flag,
not
red flag.
using
Just go
Instagram.
off. If you're not gonna post, just don't be on there. That's
It's a
hotter than.
flag. Oh my gosh. Well,
uh,
this has been so much fun.
this is so fun.
Maybe the last little question here is, how are you using Instagram right now?
Mhm. Well, right now, as I said, I'm kind of using Instagram lurking,
Hmm.
meaning like I am not really posting content. I'm just sort of looking at other people's content
Yeah.
via Chrome.
Okay, so you're not even that's not even on your phone, really?
It's not it's on my phone on Chrome, but I'm not on the app.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
And, something I actually want to add to the previous thought about sort of how has Instagram changed from a product perspective
Yeah,
is that I did download Instagram a couple weeks ago because I did need to post something that I had done, some design work, some illustration work I had done, and the app had drastically changed. The, like, actual experience of using the app was really different. I was a bit lost. A lot of things had moved around,
yeah. Like, they
and
changed where you share things and all that kinda
yeah,
stuff.
they had, like, moved these buttons, like, everything was it was I can't believe it. It was Facebook.
Really?
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Has
it
it
was
moved
like
more towards Facebook?
yeah, it's like a massive menus, you wanna do something, you're like you encounter, like, the
Oh, no.
messenger, like, you know, it's just it really bothered me. It was not as easy to use anymore, I felt. It wasn't effortless, it was a lot of tapping, a lot of extra taps.
Well, it's like I feel for the people who are designing the app and making these decisions because they have to keep up from a features perspective. Like TikTok has so much capability in terms of its editing tools and all that. I mean, TikTok gets complicated if you're actually
True, yeah.
creating content, right? But then as you try to add different features, you have to like house it and make it, the user experience clear. Like that's pretty
Yeah.
challenging, don't you
I don't
think?
know if that's the thing though, because I think like Instagram has always been good at being like sending you into like a post flow where you're creating it and you're doing the
Okay.
filters
Yeah.
and stories and reels and everything. It's more like they're trying to integrate the concept of Facebook Messenger into Instagram. And
Oh,
it's like you're
crap.
being
Yeah.
bombarded with
Okay.
the knowledge
Yeah.
that this is a Facebook product at all times. And it's like, can you just let us live in denial? But maybe that's better. Maybe it's good to be like,
No.
I'm on Facebook right now and I want to get off.
Oh my gosh. Well, that could be a whole episode just talking about Facebook.
Totally.
I Well, I just realized the thing we didn't talk about is Be Real. Like I know Be Real hasn't like
Yeah.
completely, blown up in the same way as TikTok. It's become quite popular though. Wouldn't
And
you
I think
say?
it's because they are unwilling to sell or add like ads to their I'm not exactly sure, but the last thing I heard is that Be Real doesn't want to sell. I'm still on Be Real. I post every day.
Do you
And that's
really? Okay.
because it's
I
because I'm
forget
not on
too.
Instagram.
Yeah.
And like I know some people think Be Real is kind of cringe and they're not on there, but for me it really is kind of social. Like I do have like my 10 closest or like my a couple of my closest friends on there.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
do
So it's
actually
fun to
like
catch
it.
up with them. Yeah.
Yeah,
To
I
see what
really
they're
like
doing.
it.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like don't you think it is a real reaction to the environment that
Totally.
super high pressure Instagram created where it's like it's literally built into it that you have to take a picture at a certain time. It
Yeah.
takes a photo of you and what you're taking a picture of. It never looks good. Like, I mean, you actually look good. You've been able to hack
Well,
Be Real with
first of all,
your
I
like
don't do mine at the notification time, and I'm a shameless retaker. I'll just leave it at
That's
that.
great. I mean, so sadly, Be Real could like slowly trend toward becoming this like you have to post a perfect Be Real and there's
They've made it harder. I think this might just be me, but I think they've removed the ability to take the photo via pressing down on one of the volume buttons. So you can't
Oh.
as easily take like a really nice like front camera photo. And they've
Oh.
also uh you can retake your B-reel, but they've made it easier to see when someone else has retaken it. So there's like a little number badge right on the B-reel.
Oh,
Whereas
funny. So
before
it's
it
a
was a little bit
there's a little
hidden.
bit of a like a
It's a
shaming that's
shame.
like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you did 7 retakes? Oh, wow,
Totally.
you're really
Totally.
trying." And it's not even that good and you're on
You're
your
like,
7th.
for that? It's okay.
Isn't it so funny though how like human behavior trends in certain directions and how the app like even if it isn't completely in control, human behavior can move towards something and then you have to like as the app designer literally try to like change the rules to force people back into the original vision.
Yeah. And it's an interesting like to the pull between having a real strong vision for a product and wanting your users to get on board with this new way of thinking, and then
Yeah.
also letting the way that people are using an app guide the product decisions.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like apps have failed in both directions. I feel like by not kind of holding on to their core idea, but also by not being willing to like be like, this is how people are using this app. Let's move in that direction.
Right. Where do you think Meta is leaning in that
Oh
on that
gosh.
spectrum with Instagram?
With Instagram, I think that now that I feel like that's a hard question. I think Facebook always feels to me really heavy-handed. And so I would say that they maybe not like from an ideological perspective, but from like a product perspective, it feels like they're forcing Facebook onto Instagram
Mhm.
and not really creating a product that works the way people want to use it. And so it's kind of killing the joy for people from
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think this last big moment with Instagram trying to respond to TikTok, which is a like from a business perspective, if you're employing tens of thousands of
Yeah,
people and you're responsible to stockholders and all those kinds of things. I mean, Meta has a
totally
lot
get
of
it.
issues.
Totally get
You
it.
know that you would be terrified looking at the numbers of what's happening because TikTok is capturing the youth. It's very clear that Instagram is a little passe. It's like it's not as cool. It's not picking up the youths by any means. So you would freak out, or you'd have to be like super clear on your vision. Like, this is what this app is. It's almost like um, Birkenstocks. Like, trends are changing. F you trends. We're Birkenstock. Like, you'll come back around to us eventually. But that's not what they're doing. They
Right.
completely chased TikTok. And then in doing that, they they ticked off the older, no pun intended.
Whoa.
They angered the old users because it's like, what are all these stories? I got to do
Right.
stories to get to please the algorithm, and then it didn't feel good, and then it feels like they're shifting so much and they're being so reactive,
Totally.
which I think is kind of, in this case, I think it is a mistake. Like, I think
Mhm.
they're chasing the trend so hard and they have no center of, this is what we're about. Like, we're about photos. We're the place where you see your friends and you take, it's just
Mhm.
they're chasing Snapchat, they're chasing TikTok, and I think they're just going to chase themselves into obscurity, like
I
trying
think
to be
so.
everything and being nothing.
And also I think like I mean based on this book I recently read called Lurking by Joanne McNeil, which talks a lot about Facebook. Like when Instagram started, it felt quite clear what it was and how it worked. You
Yeah.
know, posts were chronological, it was people you followed. But Facebook has always been marked by this kind of uh like opacity where we don't quite know how it works. They're not really upfront about sort of these different
Mm,
algorithms. Like, how do they know who's connected? Like, they don't tell us. And so I think that feeling that people have never really liked about Facebook, which is like, I don't quite know how this works, but I'm like obligated to use it,
yeah.
has slowly leached into Instagram. And
Yeah.
it's added complexity, but it's also just added this like sense of unease. Like, this product is not really made to be it's not having my best interest, and there's
Mm,
something manipulative about it.
yeah.
I don't know.
Wow. It's a wild thing, like these apps that become such a big part of our lives. It's incredible to remember that they are so dependent on the whims of the users and the trends,
Yeah,
and they get replaced. Like, there was an era where I just thought Instagram was forever. I know that's so
totally.
stupid. That
No,
sounds really
totally.
dumb. But now I can envision a time where it's just a ghost town, and it's just, like Facebook. I go to Facebook, and it's a very specific demographic of people. I don't particularly enjoy it at all. But I could see Instagram kind of becoming that, and
Yeah,
I can see TikTok being replaced. Like, there's just going to be new ways that people connect on different types of platforms. Um, and I just think there's so much to learn about the massive influence that these apps have in our lives that we often
yeah.
are just not really thinking about.
it like trying to explain Instagram in 20 years will sound, I think,
Yeah.
so ridiculous. And I guess that's part of why I really have enjoyed being slightly off of it is just like, yes, this is a huge part of our society or like our culture at the moment, but
Yeah.
also
It's just a moment.
it's so ephemeral, like, and
Yeah.
to be having so many thoughts about it and to be honest, I guess worried about it and thinking about it. It's it's not my favorite use of my time. And like really it was just this pervasive feeling that I was like running out of time to be cool on the internet, which is just
Oh,
that is
yeah.
there. I mean, yes, the internet is our real life, but our real life is also not happening online.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This has been such a fun
Oh, this
conversation.
is so fun. I feel like we could have done
Please.
like a 2-hour one.
I
Oh,
know
sorry,
we
I'm cutting
definitely
off your
could.
outro. Okay.
No, 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 you're not. No, this is great. I just was going to say I love your idea for a next show together, and I do want to do more. So let's just
Okay.
like book it into the calendar. Let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
If to everybody listening, if you enjoy this format of talking about this stuff, let me know because you know I've got two other kids. Emma can be replaced. Thanks,
Oh,
thanks, love, for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
love you, Dad.
Thanks for listening to the Clear and Loud podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Our producer is Pam Cameron, and this episode contains music by Jeremy Yaddo at Music for Podcasts. If you like what you hear, give us a boost by subscribing or leaving a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen. We'd also love your feedback on today's episode. Or if you have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode or a guest you'd like us to consider, email us at hello@clearandloud.com. You can also shoot us a direct message on Instagram. Our handle is @clearandloud. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.